Okay. So, yeah, I will tell you, I guess, just a little bit about the farm as background and kind of how we have started thinking about food safety over the past number of years. And then I've got some slides about different parts of the harvest wash pack process and some of the like cleaning SOPs that we do on a regular basis as well, so that we can talk about that. I am not thinking that I'm really a presenter here as much as a guinea pig. So we'll kind of, I think Hans and Billy will have some questions for me to clarify what it is that we do on the farm. And yeah, I would welcome, you know, questions in the chat, or if people have things to share about how they approach the same topics, then I'd love to hear that as well. So just a brief overview, we are a certified organic produce farm. We just do produce. And we're kind of right in the middle of the state of Maine. We do 2 farmers markets on the weekends, one of them year round. And we have a CSA program that's about 60 members right now. We grow on a little over 2 acres, including a couple of high tunnels, and trying to think there's other data there. I guess we have like 2 to 3 full-time equivalent employees on a seasonal basis. So it's like a relatively small group of people to get a lot of stuff done. And yeah, we've been farming for, this will be our 10th season farming here. I went through the MOFGA apprentice and journey person programs before starting my own farm. So food safety, I would say I started thinking about this in a more nuanced way, probably around the time that like a lot of conversations about FSMA and food safety regulation for farms was happening. We are small enough and we sell all direct to consumer that we're like qualified exempt from the FSMA rules. So that means not that we can just do whatever we want, but we can document that we make under a certain amount of money and sell to certain types of end consumers and don't have to follow all of the rules and meet all of the detailed requirements of that rule for larger farms. So that being said, we do grow a lot of leafy greens, and we also have a lot of customers who are older, babies, might be immunocompromised. So it's always been on my mind that you know, we want to be handling our food safely and not introducing anything that could make our customers sick or otherwise compromise the, you know, reliability of the farm or the reputation of the farm. So I think we started making various improvements probably 4 or 5 years ago, upgrading our containers that we use and some of our practices. I wrote a food safety plan probably like 2 years ago, and then like fully implemented it last year. Again, this is all kind of on my own, so I wasn't doing it on a deadline or to meet a specific regulatory requirement. So yeah, I just had a couple of like general points here, which are we have not a lot of specific food safety risks that are present on pretty much every farm. We only use well water, so there isn't water contamination concerns beyond, you know, we do test our well on a regular basis to make sure that it's okay. We don't have any land use either from farm enterprises or nearby that have concerns. We do have lots of wildlife, so that's kind of the main thing on our mind most of the time is there's birds, there's turkeys, there's deer, there's rodents, there's just lots of different critters present around the farm. So yeah, that's kind of a brief overview of our big picture process. I guess I'll pause and ask if, I guess, Hans or Billy have kind of questions or commentary on this like higher level here, or if any of you participants do as well.
Maybe I'll just jump in and say, like from an introduction perspective, why would you do something like this if regulation, the idea of it, or food safety plan is it doesn't have a great name necessarily, not something you necessarily want to get into. And I just want to, I'm psyched that all you guys are here. This idea that kind of proactively to get into this, I think everyone wants to do a good job growing food and have a sort of sane, happy existence. And what I have seen is that with the right attitude, getting into this, it actually can make a real big difference, not just from a risk perspective, but just sort of getting on your game, sort of dialing systems in, getting systems clearer, helping employees kind of know what they're doing and stuff like that. So that's the perspective that I've often taken with growers and seen some really positive things just all around this sort of multiple benefits stuff. So I'll just say that on the offset that I think it's awesome that you got into this on your own, Brittany, like without needing to, and that's a good sign, because then you're going to sort of take the best of what you want to do, but also what works for your farm, and that should be a focus, I think, for us today, but also just in general when you head back to your own places.
I'll just add, Brittany, I get what you're saying by the weak points, but I want to say I'm very excited for you that you have lots of leafy salad greens. Like, that's what I love, local salad greens. But I also get that there's the potential for added risk, and there's the fact that, like, my dad, who doesn't eat vegetables, he's just hamburger bun kind of guy, knows about romaine outbreaks. So when we're growing leafy salad greens, like, just the general customers know about these things. So being prepared to talk about our practices, and when there's an outbreak somewhere on the West Coast, talking about what we do and lowering the risk. And then the lots of wildlife present, there's this part of me that's like so glad for you that you have lots of wildlife, as long as they're not getting in your field, like as long as the deer aren't eating your vegetables. But there's a part of the farm I live at now where I love, we go out into the woods on the weekends and we see the deer. And if I woke up in the morning and I didn't hear those birds, even though I know they're a risk and I'm a food safety person, my life just wouldn't be as full. So there are definitely challenges, but I'm also glad that you have some of those challenges in your life.
Yeah, totally. I am too. I'm glad that we have lots of wildlife, and we don't have any like big bulky fence situation. We do use like electric 2-wire fences to try and exclude them. It doesn't always work. So I guess I'll get into that a little bit. It's a good segue to harvesting. One of the biggest things that I'm aware of when harvesting, and that I train my workers to be aware of when harvesting, is looking out for sources of contamination or presence of wildlife. Either bird poop on a tote, which happens, or things in the field, because we do occasionally have deer get into a field. So if that happens, we'll like set up a perimeter with flags and not harvest from that area. And it's a small farm, so by that area, I generally mean like 10 feet or something like that, not like the whole field, just because if we gave up the whole 1/4 acre field, that would be like 1/8 of the farm. But that's kind of how we handle that. So yeah, and just one thing we have done this past year that I think was helpful. I've always, like, in the course of training employees, explained what I do, and if there's something that's food safety related, like why I'm doing it and that it is food safety related. But this year I got more deliberate and had a whole like checklist basically of things that I like read aloud or showed employees all at one time during a specific training session, and then had them sign off on that, so that we were on the same page, and it wasn't just like me remembering or not remembering to tell each person each little detail. So I think that was helpful in getting everyone up to speed and kind of setting the tone from the beginning of the season about what was expected and what was important to us. So other than that, we're just trying to like store things under cover as much as possible. I built a packing shed a few years ago that there's some pictures of it a little further along here to help with that. We this year started sanitizing harvest tools, not just like weekly, but after each use. That was kind of a COVID thing because people are touching them. But basically, I think Billy had a question at some point about cleaning and then sanitizing them. So we do like spray them off, scrub them off, and then we've been spraying them with rubbing alcohol just because that doesn't require us to mix anything, and it's just like ready to go and we can spray it. So that's what we've been doing with like knives and clippers and stuff like that.
One thing too, this separate harvest container, dedicated harvest containers, a lot of growers have them. Some people are like, oh, I just used one, it's easier. But when I've seen the investment really pays off to have really clear harvest containers that actually don't really make it too far into the wash pack shed, if that's what you have. They kind of do a loop out into the field and come back and get washed and sort of stacked wherever, in easy access point. And that kind of keeps the dirt out of the cleaner space and saves time overall in the long run. So it's definitely a great idea. There aren't too many downsides to doing that, except for the little more upfront cost potentially, and it does pay for itself real soon. One other thing too, just about training workers, you mentioned that sign off and training everyone together. That's great. We've moved in the CAPS program to this. Often growers are using these group sign off forms with the health and hygiene sort of policy up on top, and then there's like space for everyone to sign. And the nice part about that is that, a lot of times there's a couple workers out or some are hired later, and this idea of sort of everyone's doing this together, and you see all the names like right there, on that form, and it can be on a clipboard just sitting there. And that's been a helpful kind of thing too. So I'll stop there. This looks great.
And Brittany, I just want to add two things that you said really struck me. I think we all know how important it is to tell adults why we're doing something, but then in the rush of the season, it's easy to forget. And you just letting your employees know like why we're doing those things is so important. And then I think you said something about you put the things down in writing in SOP so you don't have to keep everything in your head. And there's just like so much we have to remember all the time managing and working on diversified vegetable farms. And so just having those things down in writing brings such a benefit just to your day-to-day farm management. And hopefully it's really good for your employees too. And maybe even someday you can take a vacation and they can go to the written SOPs and see what the work is they're supposed to be doing without texting you or calling you.
Yes, that would be great. I do go away usually for like 3 days in August, and we're trying to like maybe make that a little bit longer this year. So yeah, the more things that are standardized, the better. In the meantime, I'll move.
Then, oh, you actually have a question in the chat. Do you mind? Or Anna, did you want to read it out, or I could read it out?
Well, I was going to mention it to Brittany. There was a question about the process for cleaning and sanitizing harvest and/or storage containers, and I'm not sure if you plan on getting into that later.
Yeah, I think I will get to that in our like cleaning SOP. So I will cover that for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. I did advance the slide here to some of our written wash pack SOPs. And after this, I have a bunch of photos of the packing shed, so we can kind of chat about those. I guess the main thing I wanted to say here, I guess two things. One is we have tried to set up like a single direction flow. So this will be easier to describe later. I'll actually do it while I have a photo in front of me. But that's a thing. And then we do use Sanidate in our wash water for like the batch water, basically. If we have a tub of water sitting there and we're washing multiple things in it, we'll add Sanidate. Increasingly, we've moved, especially years where it's really rainy and like stuff comes in pretty dirty, we'll have like a clean or like a non-Sanidate mixture that we dunk stuff in first to get the field dirt off of it and then put it in Sanidate. Either way, if the Sanidate mixture gets too turbid so you can't see down to the bottom of the tub anymore, we'll change it out. A couple things, I guess I should back up and say Sanidate is like, it's an organic approved sanitizer. You can buy it from Johnny's and various other local places. It is peroxyacetic acid, I think is the active ingredient. Does that sound right? And yeah, so it's very caustic in its concentrated form. So it requires you to wear PPE. That means like a face shield and like chemical proof gloves and a lot of caution when you're handling it, which seems sort of like a weird thing to have in the mix on an organic farm. However, the reasons that we use it, the reason that we use it versus like something else is it's allowed for organic production and it breaks down into pretty harmless, like I think just like hydrogen and oxygen and stuff once it's draining out and diluted in water and then draining out. So I feel comfortable with it from what I understand of it, not being like something that is polluting to the environment, despite the fact that we have to take some extra steps to handle it properly when we're mixing it.
Yeah, just I'll add a tiny bit more on that. So peroxyacetic acid, I think that was pretty close, and it's it's a mixture of hydrogen peroxide and vinegar, which has been modified to create this sort of molecule, bigger molecule that is more stable than just a hydrogen peroxide. And if any of you know, hydrogen peroxide, a lot of people use that for cuts and whatnot, and it's an oxidizer. And but if you were to get hydrogen peroxide in like a concentrated form, you would burn the heck out of yourself. Like I mean, I've been a chemistry teacher and it's like dangerous stuff. So it's the same thing. Like hydrogen peroxide breaks down into water and oxygen. And that's what really happens with this too. So very common, it's not toxic at that level at all. And it's only toxic to bacteria floating in the water. That's the other thing I wanted to say. The rate of this is 40 to 60 parts per million in the batch water. And it's not going to, if there's contamination on a leaf, specific leaf down in the little micropores or whatever, it's not even gonna touch that. All the bacteria on the surface are gonna survive that batch. Just if it gets out into the water, that those bacteria won't make it and they won't be able to infect other leaves. So that's the key thing, and that's the cross-contamination, which Brittany has written about here. But it's not sterilizing the leaf itself, just the water. Or, yeah, that's.
Yeah, I will say we have noticed that it does improve the shelf life of products, like compared to just greens that are washed in regular water. Generally, we find that they hold better. That doesn't mean that there's zero potential for, like Han said, individual leaves to have contamination on them. So I don't think of it as like a panacea, but it feels like something that helps with efficiency because we can run multiple things through a tub of water, and I won't be worried that, if the kale had something bad on it, that it's going to contaminate the arugula or the rest of the kale or various other things. So I did just want to say with this, I've heard at like a pesticide training that it has the EPA label. It is a pesticide. When you're applying it to crops, the state of Maine Board of Pesticide Control considers that to be a pesticide application. So we do have a log, and we need to like record it as a pesticide application, meaning like mix what rate we mixed it at and what we applied it to. So that's like sort of annoying, but we just have a log right there in the packing shed. It does have implications for worker training. If you have workers mixing it, they need a worker handler training, not just the regular worker training. And I believe that does not apply if you're using it just to clean like food contact surfaces and stuff like that. It's only if you're actually applying it to wash water. So yeah, that is me restating stuff that I heard at a Board of Pesticide Control workshop. I'd actually love to hear if Hans or Billy has any other comments about it on that regulatory level.
We haven't really heard that in Vermont. It's not what growers are doing. I can tell you that. So I believe that you heard that, and it may be true. And I will look in. I mean, I will look into that. It's definitely considered an antimicrobial pesticide. That's true. And if you're applying it in the field, I think that may be something you need to do. That anyway, Billy, I don't know if you have any comment on that.
My answer is the same as yours. I haven't heard that before, but it also sounds like something that could just come up. And I think, yeah, we'd be really happy to dig into that for you and just find out not only what the rules actually say, but also how people are enforcing them when they go out into field. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a good thing to clarify.
Yeah, and I'm sure different states may interpret it differently. The worker training thing is a national thing, and whatever. It's just like having somebody watch an extra 15 minutes of a video, basically. So that is fine, and I thought it was going to be like a big pain in the butt, but it's we just write it down every time that we do it, and that's probably good to be doing anyway because we're logging what we're doing. So yeah, I think that's enough to dwell on Sanidate. If people have questions about it, other than that, I can talk about that. But let me forward to like some photos here. Okay, that's our packing shed this summer sometime. So you can see it's just like a big lean-to off of our garage. We built it, I think, 4 years ago. This picture is kind of helpful. You can see where the truck backs up, and that's our main harvest truck. And we just back it right up there. And the front of the shed is kind of the dirty end. So stuff comes out in the harvest totes. We put it right on the floor of the packing shed right now. I'm hoping to maybe, I don't know. The dirty ones, I'm not that worried about being on the floor, I guess, for the most part, because that's not an area where water is like running through all the time. But that's the front of it. You can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's like a hydrant here. So that's where all the water comes from. It's like buried in a water line across the driveway. And then we have like food safe hoses that are white that go into the packing shed. And then there's another like black hose, which is the like wash off dirty trays of transplanted stuff or whatever. This is, we don't actually wash scallions this way anymore with like putting them in a tub first. We would just like cut the greens and lay them out. But this is kind of shows what the current setup is for washing stuff. So we have these tubs, which are just like plastic barrels cut in half on like a stand, and then a table where we spray things off that need to be sprayed off. I will note that wood is okay, but not ideal. I did just get a grant from MAFCA to upgrade a lot of our packing shed equipment. So I'm excited to soon have stainless steel things and other exciting things that are not what we're using currently. But yeah, that's what we've been using for the past 4 or 5 years. So yeah, this is like headed towards the back of the shed. There are actually 2 things going on in this picture that I can see. There's somebody washing scallions. There's also somebody over here running the barrel washer for carrots. So that's just kind of off in one corner. That does mean some dirty stuff is coming further into the shed than it would otherwise, just for that one specific thing, but that's just like where the barrel washer needs to go right now. And then these blue totes in the background are on a pallet. Those are the clean totes. So those are the things, the totes that clean produce goes into.
Just a couple comments here. There's some really cool things I'm seeing, and it's beautiful, the woodworking. You know, and what you can see, you guys built this, but I want to point out some good things here. You just have really kind of clear open space on a slab, and it's not rocket science, and that's like kind of what you're shooting for in general. Is that kind of setup. Good lighting is important. It looks like you've got fairly good density. I don't know how that is. Things on wheels. So I see that it looks like there's a little coasters, at least 2 on that one thing. So you could scoot it around really easily. You can even put wheels. It's like $60 for a set of good 4 coasters. Put them on pallets, and then you can, it's even being able to move when you're washing crates or bins and moving things around. I don't know if you have that, but just being able to move these units around in the space can really help. And then the only other thing is the hose. Sometimes it's a good idea to just take the time to come up with a hose overhead, or even into PVC line that splits in a couple of drop downs from the ceiling. And then that helps kind of just keep the, you always know where the hose is. It's sort of hanging down, and it could even be a stretch, one of those stretch hoses or something like that. Just a couple of those comments, but it really looks great. Just that kind of efficiency and easy to clean open space.
Yeah, the overhead plumbing is also part of the grant that I just got, so that'll be great.
And Brittany, it looks like you have great lighting.
So the first picture was like at dusk, and it's like sometimes it's a little dark during the day just because the bright sun from outside kind of messes with your eyes a little bit. So I kind of wish some areas were brighter, but at night it's great. It's like, yeah, it's super bright. This is like, I think, repacking carrots. So everything is blue because they're clean carrots that we're bagging and repacking. Just for reference, our walk-in cooler is like right behind Joy's head here, kind of around the corner. So we put stuff in there, and then it goes right out again into the back of the van to go to farmers market or CSA. This is CSA packing. So the front of the shed is in the background, and we just set up like a long run of tables, pull stuff out of the cooler, repack it, put it back in the cooler, then load it into the van. I will note here, I have a slide about some like farmers market and CSA stuff. We don't use these wax boxes anymore. That was kind of we didn't really like them anyway. And then COVID kind of put us over the edge of not wanting something that has been in a customer's home coming back. And, we just didn't feel like we could clean those as thoroughly as we would like. So we, this year, got more blue totes that are shallower than these and used those instead, and had people just take a bag out of one of those and take it home for this year.
There's a question, how big is the wash pack area in the chat?
30 by 40, I believe. Okay. So that was my photo show there. I guess one thing that we have, so this is actually like a copy and paste of one of the things we have like laminated for employees to reference in the packing shed. I just have kind of like a few sheets that are laminated. Then I have one of those like binder ring things that you can clip them together with, and then I have it clipped to like a shelf in the packing shed. So this just describes, in the other SOPs that I have about cleaning and stuff, what the words actually mean. So what does rinse mean? What does scrub mean? I guess I consider those to be like 2 parts of cleaning. And then what does sanitize mean? So rinse and scrub are to remove dirt and biofilms and stuff like that. And then sanitizing happens to a clean thing and is applying a sanitizer mixture to that thing.
And thanks for pointing that out. And I was saying that a lot of growers, it's a pretty common thing that the separating of rinsing and cleaning and sanitizing, that there are different steps. And just highlighting that, I think you've done that really clearly here, and that's really great. And a lot of, I've read so many produce safety plans, and so many farms say things like, we clean the cooler with bleach. or something like that. And bleach is a sanitizer, it's not a cleaner. And so just being really clear that it's actually not, bleach is not good for getting dirt or biofilm off. So if you have a dirty thing that actually looks dirty or has some scum on it, and you apply bleach to it in the solution recommended for surfaces, it's not going to actually clean or sanitize. It's not going to do what it needs to do in that, because the bleach can't, at that level, can't get down into that biofilm. It sort of blocks it from being active. And so it's really important to clean first, as Brittany just said. Thanks.
There's a second part.
Brittany, just in that pause, I did want to say that someone did have a question about where you get your blue totes.
Oh, yes. Global Industrial. The brand of them. You can order them. They're about like $12 plus shipping. And they work great. They nest, they stack. We've had some for like 5 years and I've never had one break. They have like hinged lids, which I would have thought would break, but you do have to, they come with a solid bottom, and we just like take a big drill bit and like drill holes in the bottom of them so that water can drain out. We do also, so this is a couple other like definitions for my SOP here. We use a pressure washer to clean those totes. We did do it inside the packing shed. We started a couple years ago not doing it in the packing shed, but kind of like aiming, like set up just outside of it and aiming away from it, because I had learned that, like, you know, you're basically pressure washing off all of the bad things that are on the totes, and then if they're just blowing around and landing on all the stuff in your packing shed, that's not great. So that's what we use to clean the totes, just like as an efficiency thing. There's so many of them that cleaning them and scrubbing them by hand would take way too long. And the pressure washer makes it go much faster. And then we do have some PPE available for workers to use. And here's just an overview of like the kind of checklist that I have. Again, this is things that I have lists of that are laminated for workers to go over. So this year with COVID, we started doing like cleaning and sanitizing some higher touch surfaces that lots of people touch every day, every morning. I just had a wonderful worker who like volunteered and basically started showing up early to do this for me after seeing me running around trying to do it before everybody got there. And that was really sweet of her. Yeah, that's basically spraying stuff down, like the steering wheel of the truck, the handle of the cart, the doorknob, the light switch, that kind of stuff. After every use, we just kind of clean down equipment, get dirt off of it. And I guess with the exception of harvest tools, like I talked about, which we do actually sanitize after each use. And then on a weekly basis, we do more of a comprehensive, like sanitizing things that are already clean. So like the scales, the salad spinner, just like different tools that we use in the wash pack area, the hose nozzles, all that kind of stuff. And then like the tables and things, as best we can, they're wood, so they're not going to get 100% clean that way or 100% sanitized that way. But and then,
are you using the Sanidate to do that, or a different product?
Yeah, Sanidate, like mixed in a spray bottle. And then for totes, we don't actually sanitize all of our market totes weekly, but we do see it. We do with the CSA totes because we're not as in control of how those are handled. So those get like dipped in a Sanidate dip.
And always read the label too, and I'm sure you're doing that, Brittany. But for everyone out there, even Sanidate, it's more like it's a stronger concentration, a little bit, but not a ton stronger, just to do that surface sanitation. And just to give you an idea, a lot of people are familiar with bleach. But you know, it would be like a teaspoon of bleach per gallon for a dunk tank for cross contamination. It would be like a tablespoon of bleach per gallon for surface sanitation. And you would just leave that. You just take a rag with that, you know, or spray and just spray it on and let it dry. And then we're also throwing around these terms disinfection since COVID hit. Like if there's a probable, like someone sneezes who you know has COVID, you know, like, and you know that's, there's a problem there and you really want to nail it. That's a much stronger concentration. You actually let it sit and then you have to rinse it off. So that might be, you know, closer to a cup of bleach per gallon, which is a very strong solution, that the strongest you would make. And you'd put it on and let it sit for 10 minutes and then rinse it off. So the concentrations are really important, and definitely reading the label is a good idea. Or you should definitely do that before you use something. And ideally, you're not using a product that you have to rinse off after sanitation. It's going to make it a lot easier to do it and faster.
And Brittany, for everybody, really, I'll just share a resource that one of Han's colleagues made in the chat box, but University of Vermont has an excellent resource about cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting and the different concentrations and when you would use those concentrations. And it's been immensely helpful for me, and a lot of farmers in the Southeast have printed that out, especially, Brittany, you said as people started getting worried about COVID and like, what do we do with our chemicals? It's a really good way to kind of sort out when, how, and where you do certain things.
Yeah, we use, I think the only thing we're using that like full on disinfecting rate for now is the CSA totes, just because they're like sitting at a grocery store for several days. And everything else we're using the lower, just the rate where you don't have to rinse it off, because that's like, you know, that adds a lot of labor, just having to wait and then do the rinse step. So yeah, then we, I guess I'll say it was hard to get into a weekly routine of doing some of this stuff. We have to wash totes every week, because otherwise, we're not going to put stuff back into dirty totes. So what worked eventually was A, having enough help, but B, just pairing cleaning and sanitizing all the other little things with that tote washing step. So like the same person like washes all the totes and then does that sanitizing step once a week. And like we tried to find like the right day where like, most of the totes are dirty. It's Tuesday. Most of the totes are dirty, and that's the day that somebody just always does that process, basically. Yeah, so I'd say the monthly stuff, we try to do a little bit of a deeper clean. That does not always happen, but we try.
Brittany, before you go, are you a clipboard type of farm? I saw that you mentioned logs. Is that on your phone? Is it in a binder?
Yeah, those are the ones in the packing shed are like laminated sheets that are just like hanging on a hook in the packing shed, so people can refer to them. I need to make more because they all like blew all over the packing shed in a windstorm this fall and need to be refreshed. But yeah, that's where they are. And then there's like a clipboard that has like a log for writing on, like when employees do that. There's like a clipboard that allows them to say like which of the cleaning steps they did and when they did it.
There's some stuff in the chat too about bleach, Clark's germicidal bleach. And Caleb, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and say a little bit about that. I'm not actually about the
sure.
Yeah, that would be great. And
the Clorox germicidal bleach that some folks may have already been using, because it's EPA registered and it is allowed on organic farms. It now contains quats. The Zoom chat autocorrected that to quotes,
yeah.
but quats, which are a lot harder for organic certified farms to use because there's some surfaces, food contact surfaces, we really don't want them on. And so there's, complicated cleaning procedures. It really means bleach isn't the quick, cheap, easy option it used to be, at least not that brand. There are some other brands that are more usable. And I think I have a list somebody gave me that I can dig up and put into the chat.
Great, thanks. And we can dig into that too if you can't find it. Yeah, you definitely would want to use a bleach that is completely pure, and which I thought germicidal bleach, well, I mean, it's supposed to be. So the Clorox brand maybe has moved away from that. And yeah, I think we're generally move away from using bleach. And for organic, you would need to, if you're using it in large quantities, you're not dumping that out. You need to dilute it to under, I think, 10 or 7 parts per million, which is about what would be in drinking water, down from, say, 50 parts per million. So it's a pain in the butt. And bleach has to have the right pH in the water, and it's not very stable. So you've really got to test it. So we don't really recommend using it for wash water. It is a convenient thing if you've got a little gallon bucket, you know, with a rag in it or a spray bottle, just to mix them up at 200 parts per million. It's like, you know, it's in a spray bottle, you'd be putting a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon of bleach. And, you know, that's pretty harmless. It's inexpensive and not a bad way to go, probably at that quantity. Pure Bright bleach. Yeah. Thanks, Caleb. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. I have like half a gallon of the old kind left of the bleach. I don't really use bleach for anything, but I guess sometimes I've used it for cleaning trays and stuff like that. So I have half a gallon kicking around, and then after that, I guess we're just moving to Sanidate mixtures for everything.
Yeah, and that Sanidate, the PAA, is great because it's really stable relatively compared to bleach, and it is more expensive, but you know, it really does pay for itself in time, especially in a dunk tank, because you don't need to really worry so much about managing the pH of the water, and it lasts longer.
Yeah, and I will say it looks, the sticker price is expensive for like a 5-gallon thing. I don't know what it is now. And then there's like usually expensive shipping. However, for most things, like it takes us a while as a small farm to go through a 5-gallon, or maybe it's 2.5-gallon container that we have been purchasing it as. And yeah, it takes a while to go through one because you're really using very little. Like when we're mixing for washing greens, it's like I haven't done it in a while because we haven't been washing greens this winter. 2 teaspoons or 2 tablespoons in the amount of water that we're using. So it takes a while to use it. I have one more slide here and then I'll like unshare so we can see each other. I just had a couple points about farmers markets and CSA. This is sort of like a Wild West area, it kind of feels like, in terms of most of the stuff I see about food safety is mostly focused on the harvest, wash, pack process, but you know, we spend 2 days a week doing farmers markets, and that's like a major place where we're actually handling the food. So I try to be aware of that. Also, COVID has been helpful for making us more aware of some of the ways we needed to up our game at the farmers market in terms of keeping our hands clean or sanitizing and washing our hands, you know, after we've ridden to the market and set up all the stuff before we actually start touching produce. We also stopped allowing customers to handle the produce themselves. So we pick it out for them and then like hand it over at the time of purchase now. We try to keep separation or hand hygiene in between handling money or customers' bags or stuff and handling produce. And something we had done earlier pre-COVID was trying to keep stuff off the ground. So we use like dollies, which are just these like, they're from Harbor Freight and they're not really sanitizable. They're like just moving dollies. So they have like sort of this carpet stuff on them to keep stuff from sliding around on top of them. But we use those to set stuff down on. So at least that is something that we can clean on a regular basis and isn't the parking lot that we're doing our market in. And it also makes it a lot easier because once you put, 4 totes on a dolly, you can push it around the stand and move things around a lot more easily that way and keep them up off the ground and hopefully free of contamination. Yeah, that's that. I'm gonna stop sharing and then. So I think that's all I got. Does anybody, I don't know, somebody else talk.
I mean, that was great. Thank you. Yeah, I would love to know if there's more questions from the audience. I love seeing those photos of your farm. It just, the produce looks beautiful. The farm looks beautiful.
Yeah, it really looks like you're doing a great job. And I want to ask you a question because you haven't been talking enough, which is, you're looking back over the last year or so. So yeah, take some time, and you were talking about, more having to have the right help and sort of make the time to do this stuff. Have you gotten far enough into this that you can see its impacts sort of more broadly in the farm, like, and talk about that? I'm just wondering, or impacts or not, like, how does it feel different or not compared to before you were, came up with the plan and these SOPs?
Yeah, feels good. I think it makes me feel more professional, I guess, and and that, I think that was part of it for me earlier on too, before I actually wrote anything up, was just, as the farm grew, I was like just being aware of like the volume of stuff leaving the farm increasing, the volume of food and the number of customers that we had increasing, and just needing to both become more efficient at doing things, involving employees more as we had more and more employees, and just kind of needing to have standard operating procedures for doing a lot of this stuff. And then, having kind of actually written up a food safety plan, and, implementing that with more formal training and stuff like that, is, I look at it as like, in the unlikely event that we ever got sued for something, which is like the worst case scenario, or got in trouble for something, I would at least have like a paper trail and documentation of what we were doing right. And that makes me feel better just as a kind of nervous type person. As far as, again, yeah, it just has allowed us to kind of standardize what we do and make things easier and more repeatable for staff. We usually have 1 or 2 people returning every year, but most of our staff starts out new every year. So the more like things that are routine and repeatable, the better. So.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that echoed. I mean, working with lots of farms over 10 years, this sense of farms that kind of own this and make it work for them and are focused on, I like the set of standard operating procedures, thinking of sane operating procedures. Like you're trying to build sanity for the whole crew and yourself, and whatever that means. Like it means different things to different people. So owning these systems that bring you sanity is one thing, is a way to look at this, and it involves efficiency and flow and quality, produce, the produce quality, and you're looking really, and that leads to profitability too eventually, and sort of looking for the overlap, the sweet spots where those things are overlapping on your farm. That's, I think where doing this can be a pain in the butt and not work well is when you kind of adopt these things, whatever, out of total, that are templates, you're shoving them down your throat and they don't really feel right. And you're, like that's where I think it can kind of trip up farms, what I've seen, and or adopting produce safety plans templates that are already written and like putting, and then not really following them, but supposed to be following them. And That doesn't work very well, I've seen. But when people, farms do what Brittany, you've done, I think it can really be a benefit, a huge benefit overall.
I see a question here about, well, first is there an expiration on Sanidate? I don't think so.
There actually is. I think it's around 3 years. I've talked to the BioSafe expert guy who knows a lot about this, and there's a bunch of different, there's a few different makers of the PAA, the peroxyacetic acid. You might have heard of Tsunami or Vigorox 15 or some of these other products. Ideally, like you can get a 15%. So Sanidate 5.0 is 5.2%, I think, PAA, and you can get 15%, and that's Tsunami is a 15%, and that's actually a lot more cost effective. But because it's stronger, it has supposedly a shorter shelf life, and they're all slightly different formulations. And so the stronger means it's more reactive, it can break down more easily. And so you have to be a little bit more careful. And what this guy said is that the 5.0 is formulated for sort of smaller farms, like diversified farms, because it has a longer shelf life. I mean, that was his point to me. And whether or not that's true, and we actually have some like 5-6-year-old stuff that seems to work perfectly fine. So we're using it with test strips. So there's some marketing incentive to put a shelf life on it and have people replace it and use it. So.
I'll also note, I think it's once you've mixed it, there is an expiration date then. I think it's 24 hours. So if we mix up like a spray bottle, for example, I've actually, this year I want to like have a little thing where you can like write in like when you mixed it, so we don't have to always wonder like when it was mixed. But yeah, you can't just like let it sit out in the water for that long. And another question I see about, are you wearing latex gloves when harvesting or wash pack due to COVID? Our farm decided not to, and to prioritize hand washing instead. We didn't have a hand washing sink in the packing shed before this, just because my house is right next to the packing shed. So people would run in there to wash their hands before harvesting or going to work in the packing shed. And I'm so glad that we were like, wait, we can't have people in our house anymore because COVID. So we installed a sink there, and it's like so much better. It's so much more efficient because it's right there, and people aren't touching much of doorknobs between when they wash their hands at the kitchen sink and then come back outside. So that was actually super helpful. But yeah, we have a policy for employees of, you always wash your hands with soap carefully when you go out to harvest, when you come back from harvesting, before you do wash pack stuff. If you sneeze, if anything that you think might have contaminated your hands, you wash your hands. So
I would echo that. I think we're really promoting more. I think the latex gloves a bit can of worms. Just it's not only wasteful, a lot of product, but yeah, you can't really wash them as well. Then they're just figuring out how to handle them. I think it's helpful to have them around because there are specific spot uses that might be helpful. Someone gets a cut in their finger and a Band-Aid and they need to cover it to keep working, that kind of thing. But yeah, good hand washing and training hand washing. A lot of people have hand washed their hands their whole lives, which is great, but it also is a liability because you tend to wash your hands really quickly, and that you kind of get into a rhythm of doing that. And so the surgical kind of thing of really, between each side of the fingers, the tips of each hand and your thumbs, and like just cover all surfaces of your hands. And if you actually do that with people, and it's something that most people don't do actually. And so actually doing it and going over, and it takes 20 seconds to do that. And a lot of people say, oh, sing happy birthday and rub your hands together. Well, actually, I think it's better to say, don't sing happy birthday, just focus on your hands and cover all the places, and go through that. And that's going to take you that time. So it's a good thing to focus on.
I do want to just note that it is 5:02, so we will want to end in a couple of minutes just to respect the time of our presenters. But Brittany, we do have a question about if you have a water heater for your hand washing sink, or if you had a hot water line available to tap into.
No, we don't. It's cold water from the well. So yeah, it's cold. And we do have like those elbow length yellow gloves. Where do I buy those? I don't know. I think maybe Amazon. They're elbow length with like some elastic around just above your elbow, and they cover the whole thing. So if the water, I mean, sometimes the water's really cold, even when the surrounding temperature isn't, but just employees can use those at any time they want when they're in the packing shed. They don't leave the packing shed, so they're just for use there, but they are very helpful for plunging your hands into very cold wash water a lot.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Brittany, Hans, and Billy.
Great. Thanks everyone, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.